home. This is my sister Sam. I used to live with her aunt and uncle in Oregon, but a few months ago I changed that. Before she moved in, I had my life totally together. But were you having any fun? I hate it when she's right.
It is one of the most disturbing stories in Hollywood history. The murder of Rebecca Schaeffer, a young and beautiful actress cut down in her prime by an obsessed fan. On July 18th of 1989, the actress was shot to death in the doorway of her West Hollywood apartment by Robert John Bardo, an obsessed fan who had been stalking her for 3 years. This was one of the biggest stories that shook Hollywood in the late 80s. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the lower depths of stalker cases and their definitions. What drives an obsessed fan to do the unthinkable? The paranormal aftermath. There are no hauntings on the site of Rebecca's murder, but there is a correlation with the show My Sister Sam that starred Rebecca and downtown LA's haunted Pico House. So let's travel back in time. Let's travel back to 1989, and the setting is Hollywood, California. On episode 39, we close season 3 with the true crime and paranormal aftermath of Rebecca Schaeffer.
Hi, this is Kat with Haunting History Podcast, and I'm here to tell you about what's new in Season 3. This season, we're doing something a little different. We are investigating, researching, and telling you the story of a missing persons case as we go along. You'll join us as we talk to detectives, private investigators, coroner's offices, file clerks, librarians, and the family members whose lives are changed by a disappearance that happened 40 years ago, and most likely spending an unhealthy amount of time on Ancestry.com. You, our listeners, are going to be with us as we get the case, and then as we find, meet, and talk to the people behind the story. We're starting this season with a ton of questions and 0 answers, and we have no idea how it's going to end. What we do know is this family deserves to know what happened. Join us by emailing, messaging, and commenting with your thoughts, suggestions, and ideas. We want your help. Someone out there knows something. Help us find that someone. Season 3 starts Tuesday, June 11th with the disappearance of Deborah Lynn.
Okay, guys. Hopefully this is the last time we're recording this episode.
Yes, we're just really testing
Yes.
Tammy's breaking point.
We are. Tammy being on the phone with Apple support.
Yes.
It was just not a good thing. Being on the phone with my husband while he was away, and this happened, was just not a pretty thing to see.
Look, I think we can all agree that we have been very upfront about our level of technological experience, and it's quite low.
It's very low. Like there's no qualifications you need to have in order to start a podcast and have a podcast and birth a podcast.
Yeah. So if you're here for Sci-Fi Hour, please stop listening immediately.
Yes, we'll wait.
But if you're here for Hollywood Paranormal, please continue.
Please, like just like, bear with us. All right, guys. So you heard it in our intro. We're going to be talking about the Rebecca Schaeffer case.
Yes.
This has been much talked about.
Yes.
But we felt that this was a great way to end season 3 by talking about this horrific crime. But on top of that, it was one of the most disturbing stories in Hollywood history, because we started our season 3 with Richard Ramirez, and we're going to end it with Rebecca Schaeffer.
Yes.
Which oddly parallels like the 20-year mark of the Sharon Tate murder, if you think about it, because both of those actresses were young, up and coming. They had a lot ahead of them, and something happened.
And I think that definitely, as you know, we're going to talk about, but I think the main root of that is how our society treats young women in general. That's right. Teaser for a feminist rant. You knew it was coming. Here we are. But also, I think it's really interesting because, as we've talked about with other crimes, the Sharon Tate murders, of course, there's these sort of events, these sort of hallmark crimes that we as a country, as a society, they dictate that decade. And this one is really the sort of bookend on the 80s.
Yes.
And transitions us into the 90s in the ways that the laws were changed, in the ways that we viewed victims, in the ways that we viewed women in general, legally and as a society. And it didn't fix almost anything, because then, of course, you have like the O.J. Simpson trial.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is such a hallmark of the 90s. But this, I think, really is the bookend for the 80s.
Yes.
That then catapults us into the sort of like hyper legal world of the 90s.
Absolutely. As we described in our Richard Ramirez episode, the 80s was one of the most deadliest decades. It was a very exciting decade with music and movies and entertainment, but then it was very, gritty and dark in a lot of places, especially throughout the city, as we talked about, Skid Row and how that escalated. And then we have this whole like embarkment of these serial killers running rampant. Like this was like, as you put it, like the height. This was their time.
Yeah.
And in, this case, when we talk about Bardo, he wasn't really necessarily a serial killer. He was just a serial stalker.
Stalker, yeah.
Yeah. Which leads me to look into this whole fascination of stalkers, cases of stalkers. And while researching this case, the questions that I had in mind were, what is a stalker? What defines stalking? And I went down this rabbit hole.
As you do.
As we all do.
Word.
Of, this whole phenomenon of stalkers. And I find out that there's not one, but a fun pack of four different types of stalkers that are out there.
That's so weird.
It's the weirdest thing, You stalk pizza. I mean, that's just
100%.
lightly stalking.
I'm all 4 types for pizza.
Yeah, and we'll discuss about that. But then there's other people that take it one step too further.
Definitely.
Maybe not with pizza, but with other things, other individuals.
Well, it's so crazy because I feel like the term stalker is such like a misused word. When you told me earlier, like, oh, there's like 4 classifications of stalking, I was like, full on jaw agape, like, I'm sorry, because it's like that thing you slam in someone's face of like, you're like Instagram messaging me too much, you're a stalker, and you're like, well, what does that mean?
Right.
Gooped.
Or we use it just lightly when we're like, oh, we're gonna Facebook stalk you. Like we like to Facebook stalk our, listeners whenever they message us.
We do.
All the time. Sorry guys, not sorry.
Not that sorry. Y'all are really interesting, so be less interesting and maybe we'll stop.
I know. There's times where I'm like looking at your pictures, I'm like, homegirl or homeboy has a really beautiful shade of lipstick.
Yeah.
I have to message you and ask you that shade.
Yeah.
Jeffree Star, unicorn blood. What is that?
Oh, God.
Right. What's your favorite shade?
Our house is drowning in Jeffree Star cosmetics.
Oh, so is my bathroom. My husband cannot stand it.
I know. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, nobody else has. I mean, I am not being paid by Jeffree Star to say this. I promise. Especially now, amidst all his troubles. But my roommate, especially, she is obsessed. She has, I think, nearly every color.
Oh, really?
Unicorn blood is really good because I love the name, Obvi. I'm also a fan, I think it's called Corpse, or like something along those lines, and it's like a mossy green color. It's like matte.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Celebrity Skin is my color.
Oh, I love Celebrity Skin. Yeah.
That color in that song by Courtney Love, of course, but that color is like my go-to.
That's hers too. That's funny that you said that. Yeah.
New podcast talking about Jeffree Star shades.
I know.
Even though we like to give shade in this community, just saying.
If Jeffree Star wants to sponsor us, I'll plug whatever the hell he wants.
Seriously. You want to plug anything and everything we
I
can.
said it
just
on
to
the
get
way
free
in.
makeup. Why
You got
not?
$1, I got a talent. Like,
there
that's
you go. Mm-hmm.
That's not my saying, so I probably have to cut that. My bad.
Now we're having like our subscriber number just like lower as we're talking about
Plummet.
this. All right, guys, let's start this Holly Weird tale with what is a definition of a stalker and what is the definition of stalking? And we'll hit on another note, according to psychologist Chris Mohandy, of, the types of stalkers out there, because there are 4 types, and we'll definitely give out some examples. So first off, what is a stalker? And according to wikipedia.com, a stalker is a person who harasses or persecutes someone with unwanted and obsessive attention.
Me to pizza. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Stalking is unwanted and or repeated surveillance by an individual or group towards another person. So you, for example, and Robert Patterson.
Yes.
Always.
I really am here for him being Batman.
Really? I am sorry, but I love Armie Hammer.
Oh, I love him too.
I love that mountain of a man that I want to climb so bad.
Yeah, he is incredibly handsome. But here's the thing. We're never going to talk about poor sweet Rebecca Schaeffer. I know. I'm so sorry.
We're like going in different directions.
Look, here's what it is. If you really boil it down, everyone's mad because Robert Pattinson was in Twilight. But I'm going to give one serious reason and one fake reason. And the fake reason is that, like, Batman literally pretended to be a vampire for all of his 20s. So it's fine. The serious reason is that it's hard to cast a good Batman who can also be a good Bruce Wayne. And I really do get that. Christian Bale was like a perfect Bruce Wayne. His Batman was fine. He shouldn't have talked in that voice to himself. It was a weird choice, but okay.
Yeah.
The thing with Robert Pattinson is if you watch him in other things, other films, he's really talented. He's a good actor. So, like, yeah, he was young and was in a franchise that made him a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
Okay, like, you gotta make it how you gotta make it, I don't know. I just try as best as I can to give movies the benefit of the doubt until they disappoint me. So, like, I try not to hate things before they come out.
Right.
And then, like, yeah, once it comes out, looking at you, Game of Thrones ending, like, no spoilers.
That's
but
true.
I was, like, really with it, and then I wasn't. So, like, I really try not to, like, preemptively hate things. So, give my sweet baby boy a chance.
Give him a chance. But I am forever Michael Keaton.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's just the OG.
Yeah,
not the OG, but he's so good.
Yeah, he was. Ugh. Him and Kim Basinger.
Yes.
All right. So, according to psychologist Chris Mohandy, who has been consulting on stalking and threat cases for over 25 years, says he defines a stalker as someone who is obsessed with the victim and involved in an unwanted pursuit. So, Mohandy says there are basically 4 kinds of stalkers. Are you ready, guys? The first one is the public figure stalker who has no prior relationship with their victim. And then there's the private stranger stalker who crosses paths with a victim in some way, and then that person becomes a target. And you might have seen a good example of this in the Netflix series of You.
So creepy.
Very creepy, which I have my doubts with that show of how they kind of glamorize stalking. When you have the stalker who's like narrating the show and he looks, like, if you squint his eye, he does look like a perfect 9 or a 10.
I do love Penn Badgley, yes.
But Penn Badgley has that seedy and creepy paleness to him.
Totally.
Yeah. But that is a really good excuse. Like, you don't want to cross a path with that private stranger stalker because you just never know.
Oof.
Now, there's the acquaintance stalker who pursues maybe a coworker or a classmate, someone else in their life. That group of stalkers, the acquaintance group, has about a 50% risk of violence. Mohandy says you have to understand the risks. Now, don't let this deceive you because you don't know which percent you know you're going to be dealing with in a particular case, he told CBS News. You still have to look at the particulars of a case to determine if it's going to be a dangerous stalker or not, which is really, really scary.
Oof.
And that leads us to our final one, the most common type of stalker, the most dangerous one. The fourth category of stalker, according to Mohandy, he describes it as the intimate stalker. He said that these are the most common and the most dangerous. He says that the risk of violence from an intimate stalker is about 74%. Violence could be anything from pushing and shoving to more violent assaults. He also notes that many domestic violent homicide cases have a stalking component. So you look at these cases with, jilted lovers, boyfriends and girlfriends who, kill their other spouses. If, I can't have them, no one else can.
Oof.
And offs them off. So those are the most, common cases as what he describes as, an intimate stalker. Now, there's also celebrity stalkers that we're going to definitely touch on. Now, for every 100 or 1,000 fans that declares their admiration for what they do, there may be one that takes this support a little too far. And celebrity stalkers, as they have come to be known, may do what they do from a misguided sense of attraction for the celebrity. And communications from these fans often begin innocently enough with fan mail that perhaps he's asking for a signed photograph. You know what I mean? Just like, oh, can you sign this photograph? Can you sign this piece of paper for me? Maybe sign my butt, maybe sign my poster, things like that. Now, fortunately, for most celebrities, this is where the communication begins and ends, but some take the step a little further towards obsession. And most obsessed fans are teenagers who will most likely adorn bedroom walls with endless posters of their favorite singers or boy groups or sports personalities. So we're going to have to put a pin on here because we have to ask Bryce who adorned his walls in middle school. And I have a feeling it was either Amy Grant, Debbie Gibson, and or maybe low-key Patti LuPone.
No, the only Patti LuPone I actually ever knew was from the PBS anniversary special of Les Mis that they televised, and then we also had the recording of it. But I didn't know who that was. She played Fatine, and I didn't realize who Patti LuPone actually was until I was much older. And then I was like, oh, that's weird. I was weirdly obsessed with her as a little boy, but didn't realize that she was a real person with a beautiful career. Because it's a really small part. She's wow, she's really good. It's sad that they didn't give her a bigger part. No, she was nominated for a Tony, you idiot. Anyway. Yeah, it was a lot of Christian recording artists, yes. Amy Grant.
There was one that you were talking about in the first episode. What was his name?
Michael W. Smith.
I call him Highlights because he had the typical early 2000.
He definitely
spiky hair highlights.
Yeah, but he has the voice of a little baby angel, and he has a really good Christmas album. I should stop free promoting people's things until they pay us. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
Jeffree Star, Michael W. Smith. And also, I think I can take credit for probably being the first person to ever say those two names in one sentence. Michael W. Smith and Jeffree Star have nothing in common.
No, but that's the unicorn of promoting.
It is.
When you just put two of their names in, a podcast episode like this.
Yeah, so put on his holiday collection of lipstick and download his Christmas album and you'll be great.
Yeah, he's a good looking guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would definitely have him on my wall.
There's this sort of movement in general in Christian worship music that you look a certain way and you sort of talk a certain way and you sort of lead worship in a very certain way. And it's country singers. They're all kind of the same to me. People are like, oh my God, I love, and I'm like, who? I literally this year looked up the lineup for Stagecoach and I was like, these are all just generic names that I've it could have been a name generator and I wouldn't be able to tell you one song or one person, but I guarantee I know what they sound like.
Just know that they have great hair, a great pair of jeans, veneers, and nicely tanned skin. That's how I always picture them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing in Christian worship music. And I'm not trying to offend anybody. This is just my observations that a lot of them are sort of tall, blue-eyed, dark-haired white dudes that like sing like this and talk about Jesus, and it's fine. Like, there are still some songs that, like, when they come on, I'm like ready to go. But
they're low-key the carbon copy of Ryan Murphy's like American Horror Story.
Yeah,
you know, typical actor that he casts. Yeah.
You know, every once in a while when the gym's empty, I'll play some Kirk Franklin or something like that. So yeah.
I crushed so hard on New Kids on the Block. My favorite guy was Joey McIntyre with his baby face, and that immediately transitioned to Antonio Sabato Jr. with his Calvin Klein ads.
Oh my God, hilarious.
Yeah, my mom walked into my room and was like, so tell me, you like Calvin Klein or not? I'm like, yeah. Do you see the model that it's wearing, you know?
All gay boys discovered that they were gay when they walked by the Calvin Klein section in a department store. Like, that's how you know, because you're like trying not to look. But like,
Mom, I need some underwear.
Yeah.
I need some underwear, Mom. I'm gonna look at the back of this packaging.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I like the layout.
And you're like trying to like pretend like you're looking at like the 16 pack of like boxers.
Yeah, made in China.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
Focus.
Yeah.
All right. So as adolescence continues, they tend to grow out of this phase of their life and learn to appreciate their affection for what it is. Now, a belief that the celebrity is the best at what he or she does in public life, and I still believe that Antonio Sabato Jr. still wears his Calvins. Just a little.
Just for you.
Yes, just for you. Now, most grow out of the stage, but there are some that don't. And adults that continue to decorate their bedroom walls with photos or images of their infatuation can be classified as deranged or even dangerous. Now, there is a condition called erotomania that can convince sufferers that another person who may or may not be famous has romantic feelings towards them. An entire delusion is created in which the object of their desire has somehow become destined to live with the sufferer. Oof. Now, this often leads to the overwhelming desire to make regular contact with the perceived partner by sending presents or even trying to meet them in person. But most stalkers begin their quest in this way. Only 1 in 10 stalkers suffer from this condition, but are equally as dangerous to the subject. Like most other stalkers, preventative steps such as restraining orders are taken as positive actions. They feel connected to the object of their own desire. So another big question is, what is the result of the 1 out of that 10? And we've seen this happen, unfortunately, with the murder of John Lennon in December of 1980.
Yes.
Now, conflicting reports say that Mark Chapman, who was responsible for Lennon's death, called out the former Beatles' name and took a combat stance before firing 5 bullets into the world-famous star. Chapman then patiently awaited the arrival of NYPD while reading Catcher in the Rye. You see, this was a very interesting case because Chapman wasn't obsessed with John Lennon. He loved the Beatles, and he was also a very, very religious man. What drove him apeshit was when John Lennon made a comment that the Beatles were bigger than God or bigger than Jesus, and that really threw him on a tizzy. So he was more infatuated with the fictional character of Holden Caulfield from the book Catcher in the Rye. And he felt that he needed to carry out this job by offing John Lennon and others, that he had a kind of like a Kill Bill list. And I know that John Lennon, Ronald Reagan, and even Elizabeth Taylor were on this list.
Jesus Christ.
But sometimes that 1 out of 10 is not even a stranger. It can actually be someone who has a close relationship with that celebrity, as we described in The Intimate Stalker. And we see this in the murder case of Selena Quintanilla Perez, who was the famous Tejano singer. On March 31st, 1995, Selena Quintanilla Perez was gunned down in a Days Inn hotel in Corpus Christi, Texas by Yolanda Saldivar. Saldivar, who had been entrusted with managing Selena's fashion and jewelry stores, Selena, etc., had been embezzling money from both the fan club and the stores. The two agreed to meet at the Days Inn in Corpus Christi because Selena needed tax documents from Saldivar regarding their businesses. Now, the motel staff confirmed that the two women were arguing loudly, and some witness stated that Selena told Saldivar that she was no longer trustworthy, and boom, they heard a shot.
Oh.
This is what they believe may have pushed Saldivar over the edge, as she responded by shooting the singer point blank.
Damn.
Now, the two also became very close friends. However, some questioned the obsessive nature of Saldivar's side of the friendship, as she even quit her nursing job, her full-time nursing job, to oversee Selena's fan club. And it was even alleged that Saldivar created a shrine to the singer that included a life-size cardboard cutout of Selena.
Sure. Well, who doesn't do that?
Who doesn't do that? Now we finally cross over to this Hollywood tale of Rebecca Schaeffer. And in order for us to
4 hours later.
4 hours later of us ranting, in order for us to begin, we need to go all the way back. And we need to go all the way back to the 80s. Now, this is where we, lay her scene of her murder. 1989 was a very unique year, especially in California. We had this famous San Francisco earthquake, and then we also had, as a nation, watched the Berlin Wall fall down. And then finally, we ended this decade with the death of Rebecca Schaeffer in Hollywood. So we're going to go back a little further to 1967. Rebecca Schaeffer was born in Eugene, Oregon on November 6th of 1967. She was born to the parents of Benson and Dana Schaeffer. She developed a passion for drama at an early age, was later approached to try modeling, and the camera absolutely loved her, and she started out starring in a lot of local print ads and commercials. So as a teen model, she moved to New York City to pursue a full-fledged career in entertainment. And she initially scored a role on the soap opera One Life to Live, among other opportunities. But her biggest break came when she landed the role of Patty on the sitcom My Sister Sam, which is a comedy about a San Francisco photographer whose teenage sister comes to live with her from Oregon. And most of the action took place in the apartment where the older sister had her photography studio. The TV show brought her back to her home coast, and then she eventually moves to Hollywood in 1986. My Sister Sam aired 44 episodes between 1986 and 88, and Schaeffer's fan base grew exponentially. During that time, she was the cover girl for 17's March 1987 issue, and she went on to star in several more movies. But one movie in particular, The Class Struggle of Beverly Hills, would soon send one of her biggest fans over the edge to the point that he travels to Hollywood to not only meet her, but to also kill her. Just as she was preparing for a potentially life-changing role in The Godfather Part 3, that fan knocked on her door to introduce himself. His name is Robert John Bardo. And Bryce, you have a lot of receipts on this mofo.
Yes, I do. They're all in the glove box of my car, just crammed in there.
Let's contact your stalker to see if we can
yes,
pry open
they have
the
them
car.
all. So John Robert Bardo is an interesting little booby. And again, I think you touched on it so well that, like, these instances don't just happen out of nowhere. There's history behind them. Mm-hmm. There's obsession that's propelling them through. And he is, like, the classic case of that, like, these instances that have nothing to do with, like, the actual human Rebecca Schaeffer. They only have to do with, like, the image in his mind. So, Robert Bardo, he was the youngest of 7 children. And he basically did the classic, like, hop around. His dad was in the military, and they were, you know, not a very well-to-do family. And he basically claimed, not to not believe him, but just one of the things that he talks about was that he was abused as well as a child. He was then placed in foster care as a result of the abuse and the fact that their family couldn't take care of 7 children. And he started threatening to commit suicide. So he was placed and diagnosed with mental illness, which they later re-diagnosed as bipolar disorder. And this was all before the age of 15. So there's, like, a lot of stew cooking here.
And we described this in Richard Ramirez's case, that a lot of stuff, like, he went through a lot of trauma as a child, as an infant, and that soon carried on to his, like, you know, prepubescent to puberty years, you know?
And it's hard because just because you know why something happens doesn't negate the fact that, like, you're still responsible.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like this weird thing where, like, he had this, like, really hard life growing up, and he had a history of abuse, and by the time he was 19, he was working as, like, a custodian or a janitor at, like, a fast food restaurant. Like, those are all very difficult things. Like, he had dropped out of school. Like, I'm not trying to say that, like, why did this happen? The path is littered with breadcrumbs, but that doesn't give you a get out of jail free card or
absolutely
like
not.
permission
Yeah,
or whatever.
It's not.
You're still
an
responsible
excuse.
for your actions,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, you know, he was sort of not well liked in his community. He actually had been arrested 3 separate times during the mid 80s for different instances of domestic violence. His neighbors essentially like called the cops on him several times because he was also exhibiting like super erratic behavior.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So he
Jeez.
then also has in his private life, and there's a really good interview that my roommate actually is the actor that plays
You mentioned
Robert John Bardo. I was like watching it. You sent me the link, and
Yeah.
I'm like watching it, like looking, and they only show like the back of his head because my roommate doesn't look anything like him.
Yeah,
but
it's
he's like
the
a
2020
big,
one.
Yeah,
right.
he's like this big, like statuesque guy, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my god, it's Harris. I'd recognize the back of that head anywhere. So it's like this weird thing. I'm like, oh my god, like what a small world, because he had like told me about it so long ago when he actually filmed it, and then I just never put 2 and 2 together. It's like, oh my god, I knew about this. So the reason I brought that up is because in that interview they actually have clips of him interviewing and like talking via phone and like explaining why he did it and what his thought process was. So he then talks about like how he kind of came to Rebecca Schaeffer because it wasn't his first obsession. He actually had been obsessed with a young actress named Samantha Smith, who infamously died in a plane crash in 1985, and she was like this young child activist essentially. And so when she died, he sort of wandered around, and he was obsessed with Madonna for a while. He was obsessed with Debbie Gibson, and he randomly sees this show on TV, My Sister Sam, and it's like an instant lock onto Rebecca Schaeffer.
Yeah.
And he sort of does the like classic step 1 that you had mentioned. He starts writing to her, he's trying to contact her, and she, you know, all of her co-stars and her family are in this interview, and they all talk about how kind she was. And it's actually really hard to watch because even though this is now nearly 40 years ago, it might as well have happened last week for them. I mean, every single person that was like touched by her is still so heartbroken, barely able to keep it together. They just can only talk about like how amazing it was to even be near her.
She had that aura about her.
Totally.
And you even brought it up when we first recorded.
Yeah.
Like when you like watched her in this interview or in the 2020 documentary.
She's so stunning and like enigmatic and charming. Like you're really drawn in.
Yeah.
She
like,
has
you
like
feel like you're her friend. Like, I know you from somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, where do I know you from?
This one woman, like I think her first agent just says it, and it's so true. It's like, oh, she really did have it. Whatever that thing was,
she had it.
People wanted to be around her. They wanted her to be a part of their lives. And so one of the things that her co-stars talk about is how sort of undaunted or like interested she was in fame, that she just like kind of didn't care. And so she kind of approached it with this laissez-faire attitude, and these sort of more seasoned actors around her were like, you can't do these kinds of things. Like, you're inviting trouble.
Yeah, because she responded to a lot of her fans. Like
Personally.
She personally did. Like, she took the time out of her schedule to sit down and respond to their letters. And they're like, honey, that's sweet, but you want to back that thing up like 20 more yards away.
I love it. I'm helping them. They're I feel like they're my friends in a way. And one of the letters that she happened to answer was to Robert Bardo. And she allegedly said, or in the letter, that like, yours was the nicest letter I've ever received. Like, thank you so much for your support or whatever. And of course, that was like the kickoff. And it like really catapults him. So he actually goes to California and shows up on the CBS lot, which like back in the 80s, like, the number of times people have like spoken, we talked about this at the school as like graduation speakers, and they're like, when I wanted to be an actor, I just walked onto the lot and put my picture on everybody's desk until I made it as a star. And it's like, yeah, that's like not possible anymore.
Not possible. You get tased.
Yeah, like one time I was at Warner Brothers and I wasn't paying attention, and I was like in line and I saw a bathroom and I just like went to the bathroom, and by the time I came back, it was like a low-key lockdown. They were like, you can't stay here. You're out. Like, you're done. Oh, yeah. They escorted me off. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, yeah, it was not great. So don't do that. And don't tell young aspiring actors to just go make it by, like, climbing the fences of Warner Brothers.
I can see people, like, back then doing the typical, like, I'm going to put on a fedora, wear some sunglasses, and have that little, Robert Stack coat, and just like wander in, like just sneak in, nonchalantly onto the lot, and boom, bam, here I am with 125 headshots.
Well, and that's the thing is like there's this sort of romanticized idea of like I'm gonna get discovered, and you might like I've known some people who have gotten discovered in various like ways, but the odds of that are much lower than you would like to admit with yourself. Myself included. I would also love to be discovered, but here we are. Like, it just is what it is. And so it's like this weird thing. But thank God he goes to the CBS lot. A security guard stops him, and they're sort of like talking to her and saying like, there's this man that says he knows you, but she like thankfully doesn't meet him, isn't like tricked essentially. And he comes back with a knife because he's so angry that they like rejected him. So now it's sort of escalating, which, we love to talk about.
Yeah.
And then, ironically, he sort of wanders away from his obsession with her. I think the initial reaction sort of jars him or scares him, or he just, for whatever reason, starts like, I hate to call it like a wandering eye, as if he's like fidelitous to her. Not a word, but it's fine. But he does sort of like take a break from his obsession with her. And as you mentioned, it's because he then later sees her in, the more mature role of Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. And, it's a very common thing that young actors do, especially child stars.
Yeah, especially Disney stars.
Yeah, where they're like, I'm going to prove that I'm not this type, and I'm going to, like, change my image. And that usually involves, like, a very young woman actor, and she's in, like, a very hypersexualized role.
Yeah, her first nude scene. She's
totally.
It's bear it all.
It's the total blueprint. So she does this, like, more mature movie where there is a sex scene, and he ends up seeing it, and it triggers something in him, and he later claims that he felt like she had lost her innocence, and that like raged him. Which, women's sexuality is none of your business, and they don't owe you anything, and there's no such thing as purity. So, like, let's just start there.
Yeah.
But, like, okay, fine. So he was back in Arizona at the time, and he drives to California with the intention to kill her. Like, he was pretty frank about that.
Set.
He's like, no, like, she had lost her innocence, and I was going to kill her. And we have to now, like, kind of take a little mini detour. I know this one has been fraught with detours, so bear with us. This one was planned, I promise. Because he essentially follows a blueprint for how to get to Rebecca Schaeffer from a prior stalking attack against Teresa Saldana. And essentially, her stalker was named Anthony Richard Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And he hired a private investigator and basically found out as much information, ends up finding her information at the DMV. And then under the guise of like a script delivery, goes and finds her, and he attacks her in broad daylight at her car on a very crowded street, and he stabs her. And he stabs her a lot, and people don't intervene. And finally, one like passing water delivery man like sees what's happening and like tackles him to the ground and saves her life. Like, she lives, and there was like a movie about her, and she starred in it as herself, which, like, what a boss move, you queen. To like be your own, like, everyone's always like, who would play you in the movie? Like, bitch, I play myself.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna open that wound again.
Nobody can play me like me.
There you go.
But the reason I even bring that up is because this then becomes the blueprint that Robert John Bardo follows, and he does a very similar thing. He essentially calls around. He's in California. He's just pumping. He hires a private investigator, and essentially he ends up finding Rebecca Schaeffer's mother's phone number.
Oh, geez, perfect.
And so he calls the number and says that he has a script to deliver. It's how he gleans her address. And then he kind of is walking around the street asking people if this is where she lives. And she was expecting, as you mentioned, a script for The Godfather 3. And so she opens the door. And, you know, it's that thing where, like, she didn't do any of the, like, things that now we know you just kind of have to do at a certain point of celebrity. Yeah. Unfortunately, she didn't have like a P.O. box, and she didn't, you know, she had her real name on the mailbox, and like all these things that she was just so not concerned with because she was such a normal, kind of down-to-earth woman. And he exploited the innocence of the legal system.
Yeah, well, I'm sure she, in her mind, like, this doesn't happen, and it's not going to happen to me.
No one would ever think of these things.
I'm not trying to victim blame her, but it's just like, I mean, I'm sure, like, there's so many wonderful things going on in her life that this was the last thing that she would ever think would happen to her. And
I think, you know, she seemed like the kind of person who really believed in the best. Not in just like all people around her, but in the world. That like the world was full of good, exciting possibility. And unfortunately, people who are not good, who have nothing inside of them, take advantage of that mindset. You know what I mean? He's just a nothing of a human.
Yes.
To do and think these kinds of things. Like, he's just so void inside. And it's, again, I'm not trying to like stigmatize mental illness. It's just that, like, when it's gone to this point, it's just so horrifying to watch.
When you see the documentary, guys, you can find the documentary, the 2020 documentary on Hulu, and I think on YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah.
It's like a 3 or 4 part series, but there are like post interviews with him.
Excuse me.
As he's describing how he, you know, finds her and how
so chilling.
Kills her, and it's just her last words. But the things that, like, the way he was describing it, like, sent chills down my spine.
And so that is what ends up happening. He asks enough people if this is her home, and he opens the door, and they have a confrontation, and she asks him to never come back. And then he comes back and shoots her, essentially at point-blank range. And then he sort of flees the scene, and he throws the gun, and he throws his copy of Catcher in the Rye, which, like, why do they all have Catcher in the Rye? Like, stop reading that book.
He had Catcher in the Rye too?
He, like, threw it on a roof, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Which, like, it's a fine book, but when people are like, it's my favorite book, I'm like, well, why? There's so many other books that are amazing. Like, Catcher in the Rye is fine. Send your hate mail about my Catcher in the Rye.
Pieces of literature like Goosebumps. Welcome to, you know, Monster House.
Choose Your Own Adventure, Goosebumps. I was here for that. Yes.
I was here for that. But yeah, because she opens the door because she's waiting on that script for Godfather, right? And there's like, you know, of course, 80s, late 80s. This is like the decade where everything was by like phone or a written messenger.
Hand delivery.
Yeah.
You had a call service, whatever the hell that is.
I know.
I don't know. Give me an iPhone. Hilarious. So that's sort of, you know, he's arrested, of course, and he's tried, ironically, as we already briefly touched on, but by Sarah Paulson.
Marsha Clark.
Thank you, Marsha Clark. Marsha Clark, I'm so sorry. I think you're really cool. I'm like weirdly obsessed with her. I love her.
Yeah, we love your hair.
But she, like, prosecutes this case. And because of it, and here's like the sort of ugly truth, is that we sort of march forward the progress of the legal system in this country and the protections that we afford future generations on the backs of like dead women and minorities. Like, that's just the tea. So like, unfortunately, her death is what it took to catapult us into sort of these common sense laws that is just like mind blowing that they didn't exist before. It completely changed the information you're allowed to get from the DMV. It completely changed the amount of information you're allowed to get from a private investigator.
Right.
It completely changed the kinds of prosecution and penalties that can be ruled in stalking cases. And then, of course, like, her family starts this beautiful foundation in her name that raises all this, like, money. And, like, her legacy lives on in, like, all these really special ways and, like, ways that have protected other women moving forward. But, again, it took her death to accomplish those things. Like, that the fact that the Teresa Saldana case wasn't enough.
That's what really pissed me off, is like, that case was not enough.
And this is what we do.
To make the rules change.
Yes.
It took this case of this poor girl. Like, what was the difference between them both?
One died.
Yeah.
That's literally what it takes. And it's just like this heartbreaking thing, and I'm not trying to be like super political. Yes, I am. But it's the same kind of thing that we see now, where it's like these issues that sort of get a little bit better and we get like closer to equality or closer to protection for people who need our help. And it's unfortunately the things that it takes to get those done are done so at the cost of the broken backs of the people that were victims. It's just like such a bummer, because like, again, her career was like on such a trajectory, and like, of course, like the antithesis is that like, well, her death canonized her, and who knows where her career would have gone, and how many people were famous in the 80s that we've never heard from again. And like, yeah, that's fine, but it's just such a sad, tragic loss.
Yeah.
As all murders are. But
so where is Robert now?
He in prison.
So Bardo was arrested the day after he murdered Schaeffer. And during his trial, Bardo's lawyer argued that he was suffering from a mental condition, as we described before. Marcia Clark argued that Bardo was obsessed, not insane. Thank God. And in 1991, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And he continues to serve his life sentence in Avenel State Prison in Central California. And he also suffered some serious injuries in 2007 when a fellow inmate stabbed him 11 times at Mule Creek State Prison.
Who?
Yes. So
prison is a bitch.
Yeah, prison is a bitch. You get what you deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't still violence, but I mean, this is how the universe is going to unravel for this dude.
Yeah, you got to watch that karma.
How's Rebecca murder made a lasting impact? So in 1990, as we discussed, a year after Rebecca's death, California passed the U.S. first ever anti-stalking law, which makes it a felony to cause another or their family to be in reasonable fear for their safety, and carries a state prison sentence. And as of 2019, this law is recognized in all 50 states. And in 1994, the state of California enacted the Driver's Privacy Protection Act, which bars the DMV from giving out drivers' personal information. And in 2002, this is really sweet, Rebecca's boyfriend at the time of her death, Brad Schilberling, wrote and directed Moonlight Mile. And the movie was based on his relationship with Rebecca's parents. And it's, if you haven't seen the movie, it's pretty good. It has Jake Gyllenhaal, like a little baby Jake Gyllenhaal.
Love it.
And it has Susan Sarandon and a slightly young Dustin Hoffman. Benson and Dana also lobbied for gun control and started the Rebecca Schaeffer Memorial Scholarship for acting students.
I love that.
At UCLA, which is really sweet. And I know that Dana went on to write a book about Rebecca, and yeah, so this is how like they're dealing. Sweet. Yeah, this is how they're processing and dealing with her death.
So they actually were also the ones who helped propel the 2020 interview like forward. They were the ones who really like pushed to have her story remembered and like told. And my roommate told me this kind of bizarre story. But when they were filming at Rebecca Schaeffer's
They filmed on the
apartment.
location of that, of her death.
And there's like this woman leaning out the window of like a nearby apartment and like losing her mind and like essentially halting production.
Yeah.
And she's like screaming and being like, you can't be here. Like, Rebecca was my friend. Like, you can't do this to her. And they had to like go and explain to her, like, the family wants this. Like, we have their permission. Like, we are doing this for them. Like, we're doing this in a very respectful way. Like, we want her story told. But this woman was like still that. Because like, here's the thing. People in LA, we get like notices when filming's coming like weeks in advance. Like when you see filming, you just kind of like walk around it.
Right.
It's in your way. You can't get to Starbucks.
Nope.
So for someone who has been living in that same area for 30 years, to interrupt filming in that way just goes to show how deeply passionate and protective people are about her memory.
Right.
Because you wouldn't do that. You literally would never. I would never in my life interrupt filming as a bystander. Like, you just wouldn't do it. And she was that moved and protective that they had to, like, stop.
Yeah.
And be like, no. Like, we're doing this to, like, tell her story.
Oh, I'm sure logistics was, like,
oh,
knocking
God,
on her
can
door.
you imagine?
Yeah. I remember, like, I was, like, doing... I was working on a film in New Orleans. It was like straight to DVD, by the way.
Love.
Carmen Electra in it. But
Double love.
Yeah. But we had discussed with several of these individuals that lived in these, it was in the middle of the French Quarter. I want to say it was South Peters, but someone, like, it was like the three owners of these like beautiful condos gave us permission to use their balconies.
Love.
And and the neighbors that I guess they didn't discuss this whole filming ordeal with decided to stand out of their balconies and hold up signs like straight to DVD Carmen Electra, and that halted production because we were supposed to shoot the parade route where she's like queen of this Mardi Gras parade, and it took us 2 hours for the head of logistics to calm this guy down to ask him to please take down the sign. And after several thousands of dollars later,
gooped,
I know, they were able to get the sign off of his balcony and, you know, get straight to production. But it's like,
that is, I mean, you got to make it how you can make it, I guess.
Yeah.
Damn.
So, guys, we're going to take a little promo break here from Stitcher Premium before we touch on the paranormal aftermath, because there are no Rebecca Schaeffer ghosts, but uniquely enough, there are some strange manifestations that happened or are still occurring on the location of the Pico House, which is located in downtown Los Angeles. And the Pico House is connected to the show My Sister Sam, and we'll definitely talk about that soon after this little break.
Hey boo hey, it's Bryce Mitchell-Williams
and Tammy Merhep Chavez,
and we are from Holly Weird Paranormal, and we just wanted to take a second to recommend some great other podcasts that are available now on Stitcher Premium.
If you're looking for some new true crime, then check out True Crime Garage, Off the Record. The latest project from the guys of True Crime Garage hosts Nick and the Captain.
Hi.
Join them each week as they revisit some of the most haunting cases they've covered to date. This is a compilation of hidden treasures, a chance to dive deeper, discuss new theories, and get updates on your favorite episodes of True Crime Garage.
Or, if you're looking for something a little different, comedian Chris Gethard's Beautiful Stories from Anonymous People opens the phone line to one anonymous caller, and Chris can't hang up first, no matter what. Just like all my first dates. From shocking confessions and family secrets to philosophical discussions and shameless self-promotion, anything can and will happen.
With Stitcher Premium, you'll also get thousands of hours of original content, early access to new releases, exclusive bonus episodes, and archives, and so much more.
And of course, our show, Holly Weird Paranormal, is also available every week on Stitcher Premium.
To get your free month trial of Stitcher Premium, go to StitcherPremium.com and use promo code HollyWeird.
That's StitcherPremium.com, and the promo code is HollyWeird. One word.
One word. Now let's get weird.
Bye.
Bye.
Beep boop, beep boop, boop, boop.
Boop.
Keep that in.
I will. So, guys, as we discussed earlier, we're going to go into the paranormal aftermath.
Spooky.
Very spooky. So there are no Rebecca Schaeffer ghosts or any strange energies that manifest at her former Hollywood apartment. But according to the blog site, IamNotAstalker.com, I mean...
Convincing.
Very convincing. The exterior shot of the supposed San Francisco building where Schaeffer's teenage character, Patty Russell, lived with her older sister, Sam Russell, played by actress Pan Dober, is a B-roll footage of the infamous Pico House that is located in downtown Los Angeles in Little Mexico. So here's the association. So the Pico House was used as an exterior for that show. And I remember even watching the show on YouTube and noticing, wait, that building looks very familiar.
Yes.
It's right across the street from Little Mexico. So the Pico House, guys, is pretty haunted. And here's a little tidbit about this little house. So it was constructed in 1869 to 1870. And the Pico House has the distinction of being LA's first 3-story building. And it was commissioned by Pio Pico, the last governor of California under Mexican rule. And the Italianate structure originally served as a 82-room hotel. Not just any hotel, though. It was the city's finest, featuring arch windows and doors at every turn, a grand double staircase, 21 parlors, 2 courtyards, a French restaurant, restrooms, and water closets for both sexes on each floor.
Well, we fancy.
We are. A bar and a billiards room, because this was like the W back in the 1800s.
Yes.
So Pio Pico was a bit of a womanizer and party animal, and he always held these lavish parties at the hotel. And it was even rumored that Pio Pico himself was, you know, a man that had a lady every single night in every single room of that hotel. Just a little rumor. He was just like the fuckboy of the late 1800s.
Aren't they all?
Yeah. Though the property proved bustling throughout the first decade, Pio wasn't the savviest when it came to his finances, and he would end up losing the Pico House to foreclosure in 1880. So the site subsequently passed through several hands, continuing to function as a hotel before being transformed into an inexpensive boarding house named the National in 1892. It operated as such for the next 3 decades, growing more dilapidated as time passed. Though the original moniker was restored in 1920, the building continued to deteriorate, a mere shadow of the once grander self, and was eventually condemned in 1922. So in 2006, the Californian Historical Landmark Society and the National Historic Landmark described it as being pretty much a historical landmark in California, and it's still utilized mainly as a special events venue, and of course for, you know, a venue for filming. And always. So it's been used in a lot of TV shows, CSI, Star Trek, and so much more. So you must be wondering, why is it so haunted, and whom or what haunts the Pico House? Well, workers have reported all kinds of mysterious footsteps and shadow figures at the old hotel, but it's not clear who's been haunting this place. And we wonder, could it be Don Pio Pico still wandering the rooms looking for women to sleep with? Or could it be some of the many Chinese men that were massacred in the area in 1871? As we described in episode 2 of our first season of the Cecil Hotel, there was the Chinese Massacre of 1871, which was a racially motivated riot on October 24th of 1871 in LA, when a mob of over 500 men entered Chinatown to attack, rob, and murder Chinese residents of the city. And the riots took place on Calle de los Negros, and I'm not going to translate that in English because Google it's more offensive. Yeah. Exactly. All refer to a different name, alley, which later became part of LA's street. Now, a total of 18 Chinese immigrants were systematically killed by the mob, making the so-called Chinatown War the largest incident of mass lynching in the American history.
Oof.
Yeah.
We are not good at that.
Yes. No. No, we're not.
Come on, America. Just deal with your racism problem.
I know.
You gotta suck that poison out, girl.
Now, the riot and massacre were allegedly triggered by the killing of Robert Thompson, a local rancher who was caught in the crossfire during a gun battle between 2 Chinese factions. The fight was a part of a long-standing feud of the abduction of a Chinese woman named Yut Ho. Now, the dead Chinese in Los Angeles were hanging at 3 places near the heart of the downtown business section of the city, which a lot of people wonder if the souls of those dead immigrants had made their way to the hotel. Now, back in the earlier seasons of Ghost Adventures, because this hotel obviously was in one of the episodes, Zach Baggins, or the Baggins, investigates this building and had reported that he had caught several specters. So he used a very unique technique called ambushing technique, where he frat boy kicks open a door and just takes a picture of whatever's in the room off guard without their consent, and he goes back and looks over the images to see if he captured a manifestation, off guard. And sure enough, he does capture a manifestation of some sort of a purple figure mist in the top floor of that building. And that's another thing too. A couple of paranormal groups who have investigated the building have claimed that the top level of the Pico House has a lot of activity. They have seen specters of lights. They've seen shadow people wandering in and around there. There's even been a story of people who have seen Pio Pico himself just, walking by the balconies of the hotel. So
spooky.
Very, very spooky, but no one knows what is the cause. But, like we mentioned in past episodes, when something violent occurs on a piece of land or just in one place, there's always some sort of residual or some type of residue that is always left behind. So maybe it's the manifestation of that massacre that's probably recurring in that location.
You know what kind of makes me feel a little gleam of happiness is that I find it kind of nice that, like, there's no Rebecca Schaeffer ghost. Even though that's like, that would have been the better bookend to our story, maybe. It's like, oh no, it's actually really sweet. She didn't have any unfinished business, and she had done the things that she felt like she needed to do here, and like she was able to like move on with like love and leave behind like only positive memories. Do you know what I mean? I just think like how sad it would be if like her family was also having to deal with like people every 40 seconds being like, I saw her ghost. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I just think it's like really lovely that like, oh no, she accomplished like what she needed to accomplish, and her life wasn't unfulfilled. And I think that's also like something that's so sad, is like so many times these hauntings are people who have so much left undone, and I don't know, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't like Caroline, or oh, I didn't like Rebecca. No, there's nothing like that. Yeah. It's just really nice to think, like, I'm glad that in some way she is resting in peace. You know?
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean. That's the perfect way to say it.
Yeah. So, guys, that is the true crime and paranormal aftermath of Rebecca Schaeffer. And yes, I'll be making a backup of this recording.
Yes, we will.
Don't worry, I will.
Learn from our mistakes, allegedly.
We will. At least this is the first one after 2 years.
I know.
Of recording.
I'm really proud of us.
I am. That's why right when I left my guard down, I was like, great. Here we go.
You've got a lot of plates spinning. Let's just...
Yeah, we do. Yeah. But this is our last episode for season 3, guys, because we will be hitting our hiatus. We'll be off for the rest of July, and we'll be back in mid-August for our season 4.
Yes.
Of course. So we definitely have a lot of plans for the summer. I definitely am leaving the country to go to Honduras.
Queen.
To go to Roatan, to get sunbathed, to, just come back as a bronze-tanned goddess.
Hell yes.
And I know that you will be browsing the Target.com page for your floaties, right?
I will be leaving my couch sometimes, allegedly. No, actually, I do have some fun stuff this summer.
That's good.
I'm a little summer warrior.
You're a little summer warrior. You have a little summer project.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. We just need a break, too. We just need to have a little, us time. And definitely some time to plan season 4.
Yes, that's true.
We have, I have some really good ideas for season 4, guys. We have some really juicy things. And here's a little tidbit. I have been talking with a friend of mine, well, a friend of ours, Claudia.
Oh, hi.
And she is going to be putting us in contact with a couple of women who worked on the films of Paranormal Activity and The Conjuring.
Cool.
And they have some stories, some creepy stories of what happened behind the camera on set.
I love that you'll be asking them about that, and I will be asking them about Patrick Wilson.
There you go. I'm sure they have a lot of tea to share. They're like, yeah, let me tell you about dressing,
Oof.
Patrick.
Go slowly.
Oh, I know. Whew. And of course, they have a lot of stories about the Warner Brothers lot.
Do they?
Oh my God, they do.
Ugh.
It is pretty haunted. There is a part of that lot, especially in the wardrobe department, that is really haunted, and a lot of the stories parallel. So,
oh goodness,
there is a lot of activity that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
And we also have a good thing that happened too, is that I've been in contact with another one of our listeners, and she messaged us that she has a story about something that happened to her at her job at Fox.
Oh damn.
That Fox is haunted. So
that makes sense.
Yes. So we will be trying to conjure up some really juicy episodes for you guys in regards to season 4. We're going to be working on some plans soon, so don't you worry, guys. We also wanted to take the time to thank 2 very awesome groups of people. We want to first off thank OC Ghosts and Legends because they have invited us to a lot of their field investigations, and I'm just so excited that they are new friends.
Yes.
And second, the Edge of Reason radio show.
Yes.
So those 2 women are amazing on the Edge of Reason, and we hope that we get to be a part of their radio show soon. I know that we're trying to plan something.
Yes.
So if you don't know anything about these 2 groups, Edge of Reason and OC Ghosts and Legends, then Google them because you're missing out on a lot, guys. And don't forget that if you love Holly Weird Paranormal, to please just go and subscribe and rate and rant about us on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us out, guys. If you leave us a nice yet kind review on our Apple Podcasts and give us some 5 stars, it really helps us become a little more noticeable. Yes.
I get it. They're mostly going to be 2 stars saying that I rant too much. That is a fair review. I know.
I love the one review where the one person left us 2 stars and mentioned that we love to read Yelp reviews.
I do love to read Yelp reviews.
We do. I mean, who doesn't?
Sorry, it helps me decide almost every decision in my life. So.
I know. I found my dentist, my doctor, my gyno, my vet.
Yeah.
Hello.
That tea was piping hot. They got us.
So, guys, also, we're everywhere. We're on CastBox, Blueberry.net. We're also on Stitcher, as you heard on our promo, Stitcher Premium. We're advertising for them. Yes. But Stitcher Premium is pretty dope, guys.
Yeah,
it's
so
really
cool.
awesome. So definitely get that free trial because free is a good thing.
Love free.
And, of course, we are everywhere, wherever you get your podcast fix. And figure out what we're doing, during this break. You can find us on our personal Instagrams on Supernaturally Tammy. And you're on what?
The Smirking Assassin.
Yes. Also, follow Hollywood Paranormal on Facebook and on Instagram at Hollywood Paranormal and Twitter at HWP Podcast, guys. So till next time.
Bye.
Bye. Stay Holly Weird, guys, and have a wonderful and safe summer. Bye. Music featured on this episode by artists Alvez and College featuring Electric Youth. We wanted to take the time to thank our new spiritual bays and patrons, Crystal Smith, Jennifer Conrad, Pim J. Taxana, Jax Duval, and Jessica Koshball. Thank you so much, guys, for your pledges and donations. It means the world to us. Speaking of Patreon, why don't you head on over to www.patreon.com/HollyWeirdParanormal. There you'll find our Patreon page. And for $1 or more a month, guys, you could be some fancy Gucci Hollywood producers helping us produce the next season for Holly Weird Paranormal. Plus, you get to score on some free stickers and merch. Look out for us on August 18th. We'll continue season 4. Till next time, guys, stay Holly Weird.